Hello, my name is Troy, and I'm going to be showing you how to make a walking communities app in code.org, specifically trying to practice parameters for Unit 7 in Comp Sci Principles. Up right now, I have the demo app. So the general idea here is I should be able to pick a state, pick a size of community, and then get a list of cities. I must admit, I'm right now in Washington. So, hey, here's some cities I recognize. As I go medium, yep, those are some medium cities, and small, those are some small cities. If you're based in the US, might be a good time to check and see, can you find your city, and does it match up with kind of what you're expecting? In a minute here, we're going to make use of a data list. I have a template that I've kind of built for my students. It's linked down below. Generally, the idea is that you pull it up, you remix and make your own copy of it. One of our first steps is we need to go to data and pull in the bike walk commutes data. If you haven't already, you want to type in walk and just go import. First thing we need to do is kind of look at the data for a second. So keeping in mind, we said we should be able to pick a state and a size, and then see a city name and the percent of walkers. So notice, as I'm going to do this, I'm going to need the city, the state, the size, the percent, and I'm actually going to need the mode too, because at least right now we don't want the bike data. And so we'll need to check and make sure if it's bike, or as we go farther, eventually we'll find the walk data. And so now I'm just scrolling big time. It's not on the first 500, but notice there's multiple pages, so I'm going to jump a few pages in. And see now we're to all the walk data. So like for New Jersey small, South Plainfield Borough should show up for the small New Jersey cities with 0.9 walk commutes. Okay, so let's actually get going. So the first thing I need to do is kind of just process all this code. So I see up at the top, we have a list of states that's being used to help set up a dropdown. So right now, if I just hit run right away, I see that this has a list of states. So when I reset, it says option 1. When I hit run, it's already populating with states. Okay, so then I see in the comments here, I need to make data lists for states, cities, city size, percents, and modes. I think that's matched up with what I was just identifying as the ones we need. So to do this, I'm going to pull in var x equals blank and put it in the right spot, kind of with my comments. I'm going to, on the left, use states, and then on the right, I'm going to use my get column command. This will help me connect what I'm seeing right now, the code part, to that data table we saw a minute ago. So now, in my states variable, it's going to have a list of states. So all these states will be getting put into that data list in order. So in spot number 1, I should see South Dakota. And then Georgia, Illinois, California, Michigan, Massachusetts, California. Notice as we're going down, duplicates are expected, and that's partially what we're looking for. I'm going to do the same thing for cities, city size, percents, and modes. A minor shortcut for me is going copy and then paste, and then I'll go through and update. I need to make sure that as I'm doing this, I update the column to match my variable. So cities is the city column, city sizes is getting the city size column, percents is getting the percent column, and modes is getting the mode column. Notice I'm purposely using plural to indicate that it's the big data with lots of data. Now I need to figure out what lists I want to filter down. So notice in my demo app, I pick two, and then it shows me a city and a percent. That's it. So I think those are the only two filter lists I need. So I'm going to go and grab my varx equal blank to make a new variable again. And I'm going to make filtered cities. And right now I'm going to just do square brackets to show that I will have a list here, but I don't have any data filtered into it yet. As well as filtered percents. And again, square brackets. So I'm feeling pretty good. I got my list set up. I got my filtered list ready to go. But now I need to actually pull in this data and put them into these lists. Okay. Step 2. Set up the on events for the state dropdown. Get the state and size from the user interface. Then call filter. Okay. So to get the state and size, I want to come over here and essentially take Alabama and put it in a variable. So I'm going to call this wanted state. To get that, I should use my UI controls and get the text from the dropdown. When I do this, hey, the IDs are reasonable. And I can hover and see that, yep, that's the state dropdown. Again, copy paste. I'm going to do something similar for the size. And again, I'm going to look in here, city size dropdown. So now I need to say, hey, filter, use that state and that size that I just prepped. So in my functions, I'm going to call a function. I'm peeking down here and I see filter state city size. So I'm going to say filter, so the names match. And then for the parameters, I'm going to use the argument of wanted state. So this is the value I want it to use. I want it to kind of take this wanted state and put it in state. And the wanted size and put in city size. And that's going to help me filter. Notice I do have a second on event for the city dropdown. That being said, I think it's just going to be the same thing. I'm going to get the state, the size, and then filter again. So I'm going to just take a second and code that out. Notice sometimes I have the habit of using a little bit of extra text code and then clicking outside the box and letting code.org auto format. You could also use these arrows here to add or remove parameter spots. I think we're done with step 2. I pull in the variables and then I say, hey, filter based on those variables. So now we need to actually filter. We need to make this part work. So the very first part of filtering, frankly, we just want to make sure our filtered variables are still empty. This really matters when you're doing a second or third run. So if I initially pick Kentucky, I make sure I delete the Kentucky data before I pull in the Idaho data. So to do that, here, I just want to say filtered cities again. I just want to make sure it still is an empty list. Notice I'm not using var because I'm referencing the already created variable I made up above. So I'm referencing these two variables, filtered cities and filtered percents, that are already made. So I make sure they're empty and then start a for loop. So in my for loop, I'm going through all the data, all the cities. I want to check if the state matches the state I want, and the size matches the size I want. And the mode is walk. Notice up here, we said we're given a state and a city size. So what I can do is I can say, hey, is it the state I want? Is it the city size I want? But somehow I now have to say kind of the state from the list. So noticing how I'm using a loop, I have I for index. What I can do here is use states spot I. What this is going to do is it's going to go state spot I. It's going to come all the way up here and find my states list and check spot I. I want to do a similar thing for city sizes, spot I. So city sizes, spot I. So I got state spot I matches my parameter. City size spot I matches my parameter. Mode spot I equals walk. And notice walk is in quotes because it's a value, is not a variable. So now that I've found the rows of the table I want to actually use, I need to save those rows by appending them to my filtered lists. So I'm going to go and get append item. I'm going to use my filtered cities. And for my filtered cities, I'm going to put in whatever is in the cities list in that same row of the table, in the ith row of the table. I'm going to append again. This time filtered percents. And use our percents table from up above. I must admit, some of these I'm kind of trying to remember the names, so oh no, it says percents isn't quite right, so I'm going to go back up here. Oh, it's here. Somehow I must have misspelled, so I'm actually going to copy it and bring it down here and just paste it. Oh, something changed. I had a misspelling or a typo. So sometimes that's a good thing to check. Right now, just to kind of see if this is working, I'm going to put a pause here and run my code. When I run, I'm not really expecting too much to happen yet, but when I go and I pick a state, I see it's just paused right here. So I'm going to type in watcher state, city size. Okay, Delaware small, that's seeming right. And then I'm actually going to do filtered cities. One thing that's maybe would make this a little bit easier is I'm not sure how far down the data I'm going to have to go to get to a small city in Delaware. So I must admit, this could be very time consuming. If I was trying to be a little more proactive, I would look at my data table ahead of time and try to pick some data that's only a few rows in. This is going to be a little hard with the byte data coming before the walk data. So I must admit, I think what I'm actually going to do is put a pause right here and remove this one. It shows me that we've reached one that works. And so step in, Dover City. I'm just curious. Oh man, 2084. I'm glad I didn't click that long. So is Dover City in Delaware? I think it is. Sounds like a city, maybe. Let's see, what's another one? Newark City. Oh yeah, that's in Delaware for sure. So I'm feeling pretty good about what I got going so far. Okay, so step 3, I think we're done. Step 4, update screen. Ooh, I don't remember seeing update screen earlier. What does this triangle say? Update screen is defined, but it's not called in your program. Add a call to this function in your toOn events above. Create a variable that could hold. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is kind of like a filter. I need to include update screen up here. So I'm going to put in update screen. Looking down below, I'm seeing that takes state and city size. So again, I'm going to come up here. What should my arguments be? So I'm seeing I have this wanted state and the wanted size. Comma, wanted size. Or you could use the arrow just then. And similar down here, I'll use the arrow this time just to show that. So I'm going update screen, wanted state, wanted size. So I'm seeing no yellow triangles, which is kind of getting me excited. This yellow triangle is still here. No city sizes defined, but not yet used. Oh, okay. That's something. Yeah, I haven't used state or city size in this scope yet, in this part of the program. Create a variable I could hold, for example, in Alabama for small cities or in Washington. Okay, so I see they got a variable going for us. I'm going to just paste this in for the moment. So in Alabama small cities, what I'm seeing here is if I go Alabama small, that works. Like the text is perfect. But as soon as I go Arizona small, oh man, I want this word to change. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to press quote, quote, and kind of create a string right here and a separate string over here. And in the middle, I'm going to put two pluses. And in the middle of that, I want to put a variable right here. I'm noticing that I have this parameter state that holds my current state. So in Arizona for small cities. Okay. As soon as I change this, now I want it to be in Arizona for medium cities. Well, the small part, I'm going to do a similar thing. So I'm going to put quote, quote. In the middle, I'm going to do a couple pluses. And right here, I'm going to use the city size parameter from up above, this value. Okay, so this should start out a variable to make kind of this text in Alabama for small cities or in Washington for large cities. Notice the \n. That's just going to make it go to a new line in the text as it actually prints it. Okay, so loop to add all the filtered cities with this format. So I'm going to do a loop. We're doing a for loop because we're using lists, and for loops help us go the length of the list. I want to be going through my filtered list, so I'm going to go filtered cities dot length. And then inside, I want to add this to my existing variable. So I'm going to use the counter pattern. So to use the counter pattern, I'm going to have output equals output plus some more stuff. And in here, right now I'm just going to put quotes to kind of hold a spot. In here, I want to do this. So I'm kind of copy and pasting it down. So, but Alabaster City 2% or 0.2% isn't always going to be right. Again, I need to use my variables. So I have the filtered cities and the filtered percents. Let's try and mix those in. So I'm seeing this whole first part is the filtered city. So I'm going to kind of move the quote over and put filtered cities index I plus space dash space. Oh, and then I got a percent right here. So I'm going to kind of do that quote again with some pluses in between. And here I'll do the filtered percents spot I. Notice as soon as I click out, code.org does a nice job of kind of boxing it for me. Okay, last step is kind of noted. I need to set this text to the screen. So again, that sounds like a user interface thing, a thing where I'm interacting with my screen over here. So I'm going to use set text. Text area 1, is that it? I feel like we probably could have done a better job with IDs. Oh yeah, text area 1, okay. And what text do I want to set there? Well, I want to use that variable that I've just been working hard on. And I was trying to delete the quotes and somehow it jumped on me. So let's see. Did I remember this right? Yeah. Okay. So let's test and see. So I run and pick Arizona. Okay. Again, I said I'm in Washington, so I'm going to try Washington City. Yeah, these are small cities in Washington, large cities. Yeah. And so when I switch to large, I'm seeing that I don't get any of our small cities of Washington. I'm seeing I only get the 3 larger cities. When I go to, let's say, medium, no, Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane all disappeared. So that makes me feel like we're emptying the list between runs. As I go through, I'm feeling pretty good. So up at the top, I set up my dropdown, I set up my data list from the table. then my filtered list that I later fill. I have two different on events. You can interact with my app through either of the two dropdowns. This does the first dropdown. This does the second dropdown. I have a filter function that takes two parameter values. You essentially say, hey, filter for Oregon medium, or filter for Maine small. And it goes great. I'll empty out my lists. I'll check all the cities, all the rows of that 2,000 some odd cities, whatever. If the state match, if the row of the table is the right state, if the city size is the right size, and the mode is walking, I'll add it to our lists. And then lastly, it goes through and it kind of builds a string to look all pretty for output. So when we go in here, it builds this in Connecticut for small cities. That's happening kind of on line 73 here. And then all of this is happening in this for loop. It allows the for loop to happen just as many times as it needs for the data. And by having a \n at the far end, it makes it so every city is put onto a new line. The one thing I don't have yet is when I first run, nothing happens down here. So I just want to suggest in our example, it did have, let's see, I'm going to refresh this page. It did have, as soon as the app loading, some cities appearing. So you can kind of see it's loading, the list loaded, and then all the cities populated. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm also going to suggest this might be a great place for a little bit of directions about your input and output. So I would either encourage you to put some directions here about input output, maybe using design mode, or include kind of a setup run. And so what I mean by that is if we take all this wanted state, wanted size, all that, we can run it once. I just use copy, and now I'm using Control V to paste. I can run it once outside of on event. What this will cause is it'll cause all these lists to load, the filter list to get set up, and then right away it's going to pull the state and size, filter based on those, and update based on those. So now when I initially run, immediately I see data show up. I hope this was helpful. I hope this works through your parameter practice, and I hope it helped you build some parameter skills. Thank you for watching and following along with me.